So I have an audio file that I need to synchronize with multiple light changes. In other words, there are places when I'm playing back this audio file that I want light changes to happen. So in other words, send a signal to a light board or to my lighting software. Now there are many ways you can do this. We can start off and have a cue here, and then you have an auto follow cue so that at so many seconds or microseconds I can have it jump to the next cue and just do a series of auto follow cues. That requires a lot of mathematical computation and a lot of aggravation. Can do it that way, but that's really the hardest way to do it. The easiest way to do this is to use what we call a MIDI sequence. Now, MIDI commands we looked at, and we can send a command like note on, note off. A MIDI sequence is a series of note on and note off commands being given at a certain time interval. So they are timed, but it's like a long list. So instead of doing a series of cues, we're going to do a series of MIDI commands that will just be incorporated in what we call a sequence. So it's fairly easy to do. With other show control programs, you have to go outside of the program and create this MIDI sequence and then import it back into the program. CSC Show Control allows you to create that MIDI sequence right in the program, which is fantastic. We'll show you how to do that. So I'm going to highlight my audio that I want to synchronize my light to, and I'll click here on Show Me the Waveform. And here's my waveform for the audio cue. That makes it easier for me to find the peaks where I want my light changes to happen. And I can actually listen to this a little bit. So you get the idea. You can kind of hear the impact points there. And then what I'll do is actually place my cursor here where that first impact is, and I can look down here and it gives me timing in minutes, seconds, and then microseconds. So 132, and then I can look, and then I need my next one to be at 399, and so on. So I would just create a list on a little notepad exactly where I want all of these impacts to be and where I want the lighting changes to be. So a little paper and pencil work here to start off with. So I've got my list of timings where I would like these light changes to happen. Now the next thing I'll do is go into the sequence part of CSC Show Control. So we go up here to MIDI and we go to a MIDI sequence, which is going to bring up this. Click on sequence here, and then we're going to click on over here, create new MIDI sequence, and that will bring up this menu. Now in here we can actually type in the timing, which makes it so much easier to do. So for example, I want my first cue to be at 1.42. Now the only difference here is that I'm going to make it 420, so it's in microseconds. So I'm going to click here, which is Insert Event, and it'll come up. I can tab through here. It's hours, minutes, seconds, so I'm going to type in 1, and then this is going to be 421. That's my timing. All right, my command. I want a channel 1 command. I'm going to be sending this to a cue list in my lighting software, so I'm going to use the same note over and over to send the go command. So I want my note on command. I'm going to call this note 20 and at 100. Notice that I'm just using my tab key to progress through here, and I can put in a comment if I want to. I don't need to. I just click OK. So now I've got a note on command happening here at 1 second and 421 microseconds. Now we do need a note off command, but I found this easier to go through this first and put all your note on commands in first, and I'll show you that. I'll do one or two and show you what I mean. So I'm going to do another insert, and it brings up my timing from my previous cue, but the next cue is going to be at 3.984. So I'm going to tab over and type in 3 and then 984. It is going to be a note on event at note 20 again, because I'm using for the cue list, at a value of 100, and then just hit enter and that'll go in. So let's just do one more third cue here to show you how to do that. Insert again. My next cue is going to be at 6.547. If I tab over, 6 seconds and 547 milliseconds. Channel 1, note on, note 20, and a value of 100, and say OK. So I would do all my note on events. Now I've got to go back and put note offs because I'm sending note 20 multiple times. Remember, in order to do this, you have to turn it on and off, on and off. So now after I've completed my list of ons, I'll go back and do my off commands. So I'll just highlight this and click Insert. Now, what I want to do is have my note off command just come slightly later than this cue. So I'm going to say add 400 milliseconds to that. So instead of being 1 and 421, I'm going to make it 1 and 821. And now this needs to be a note off command. I can highlight it with my mouse, or I can actually use the up and down arrows to bring that up. Again, it's going to be note 20, and there's not going to be any velocity. So I'll click OK. And notice now I've got my note off command inserted in there. And I'll go to my next note on command and do the same thing. So I say Insert. This cue is happening at 3.984. So let's just make it like 4 and maybe 400 milliseconds. So about a half a second later, I want my note off command. Just use my up arrow to change this to note off 20, put it in. I've got my note off command in there. We'll do one more so you get the idea. Let's highlight this one. There's my note on command at 6.547. So I'm going to do it at, leave it at 6 and make this 947. Make it a note off command and make sure that it's note 20 so that it matches. And then we're good to go. So then you just progress through the whole list. So this is an easy way to actually type in the values for this to make this work. Then we simply go up here and we say save that sequence file, and I'll just call this test, and that's my test sequence file that I'm using there, and click enter. And notice now that we have a name up here, test.cms, and the CMS is the CSC Show Control's designation for that is a sequence file. Then I can simply click my close window up here. Now, I'm in my sequence manager, so I want to add a sequence to this cue. So we're going to want to add the sequence that we just created, the test CMS, and I'll highlight that and say add sequence. And now that sequence is added to that. So we're ready to go. And you can see that the sequence player is up here also. Now, I went ahead and actually did this already for my first cue. So actually, if we take a look up here, I have sequence, I have my music, and I have my sequence 1, and I call this Epic CMS. So this is going to send a series of note 20 on and off cues to activate my light board. So I have my light program up, and I just did something really quick here. I've got a couple lights so you can see what's going on. And I've already set up my association, so the play next cue command is associated with note on number 20 over here. I've already done all that association stuff. You can check out my tutorials and I show how to do that. So I'm just going to get my light program started with my first cue, which is a blackout here. Now, starting over here, it's going to send that sequence file and it's going to advance it through all of these cues. Here we go. And we'll just stop that. Okay, fantastic. Everything is synchronized. If something's a little bit off, you can always go back into this sequence and edit it, timing. And the timing is up to like milliseconds. So you can go in there and edit it and really tweak this to be exactly the way you want it to be timed out. So that's an example of firing note 20 on and off over and over and over again so that I can do it with a cue list. You can do the same thing, but type in different note values that would activate actually buttons up here. So we could do like, say, note 1, note 2, note 3, note 4, note 5, note 6, note 7, note 8. So then when you're typing in your sequence, you're going to do different values for the notes. And you would associate those note values with the buttons. So you can do the same thing and actually have it activate buttons instead of having it activating the go cue to a cue list. So there is an even easier way to record a MIDI sequence with this program rather than typing in the values. You can actually record this sequence inside the program itself, which is fantastic. It saves a lot of time, makes it much quicker. We're going to show you how to do that. So I have my nano demo cue here. I have my audio file up again that I've got to create my sequence so I can do the timing along with that. Now I'm going to be using a device. I need to be able to play note on, note off messages. You could use a keyboard, MIDI keyboard. I'm going to be using my Nano Control 2. If I press any of these buttons, they're going to send note on and off messages. The slider and the knob will send controller messages, but I just need note on and off messages. So I'm just going to be pressing these buttons to send note on and off messages and have those recorded. The next thing I need to do is go up here to the menu and MIDI and go to MIDI control mapping, because I need the CSC Show Control program to understand that it's going to be receiving input from a MIDI device. So up here, and it says cue control, but we're not going to be using it for cue control. Just make sure, in this case, I'm going to select my Nano Control 2. So I let CSC Show Control know that it's going to be receiving signals, input signals from that Nano Control 2. So all I need to do, click OK. Now I'm going to go back up here. I'm going to select my MIDI sequence. Click on Sequence again. Click on Create New Sequence. The difference this time is we're going to record it instead of typing in. So first of all, before I come in here, I want to make sure that I have highlighted my cue with my audio in it. I'm going to put a check in this checkbox over here that I want to start the current wave player so I can listen to this audio file playing while I'm recording my on and off messages by pressing the buttons on my Nano Control. So we're ready to go here. I'm going to click record. Now it's going to wait for me to press my first button to get started. So here we go. There's my cue. And it's so easy. I just press the button on my Nano Control every time I want to hit. Okay, I'm finished. Now, unfortunately, the audio file is going to continue to play while I'm doing this. I can't stop it until I finish what I've done here. So I'm just going to turn off my speakers for a moment so we can't hear that. First of all, I want to get rid of this first cue up here because that was my way of starting it, but I really don't need that cue in. So I'm going to get rid of that first note on and first note off. So these are the cues that I need. The timing has been put in there. We're good to go. I'm going to say save it. I'm going to call this Nano OK and save that. So it's called Nano OK. Notice that we now have the new name up there, Nano OK. Close the box here. Now I want to pick my Nano OK because that's the one that I want to match with this audio file over here and say add the sequence. So it's been added to the cue. Notice that we were using note number 4 for this one. So again, I'd have to adjust my lighting program to accept note number 4 as the cueing value for this. But again, you could use it to do the same note over and over or different notes if you're running buttons. Okay, so I have my program back again. I've reset this so it's going to be accepting MIDI note number 4 to actually activate that button down there. And now we can play this back. I'll get this started by playing my blackout cue first. So there you go, totally synchronized and running for you. And again, you can always go back in here if you want to tweak some times to make this really, really align perfectly with your audio file. But this is the way that I recommend if you need to synchronize multiple lighting cues with an audio file. This is the best way to do it.